What the hell is the Raiders' plan? Because I look at this Raiders team right now, Sean, and I wonder to myself, do they think adding Geno takes them to an immediate position to compete to win the AFC West? I think the answer to that question is no. Does this provide them with a long-term solution at quarterback? The answer to that is no. Do you know how old Geno Smith is?
Geno Smith, 34 years old.
He is 34 years old. He is somebody who we saw what his ceiling was. It was his first year as a starter in Seattle. Last year, he took a little bit of a step back. Part of the blame goes to Ryan Grubb, and there not being much of a mesh or a connect between Geno Smith and the offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. But I really just don't see where this is going. I don't see how this is going to be some sort of a move that gets them into consistent, real playoff contention. If you want to be a wild card team and get bounced out in the first round, sure, that's fine. Maybe this gets you there in 2 years. But I don't feel like this is a long-term move that actually builds this Raiders franchise.
It's almost like you would think that the pitch was Geno doesn't have much tread on the tires, so his 34 is actually a 27 because he had about 5 years where he really didn't play.
Wait, no, that logic doesn't apply to quarterbacks really that much though, because like he's not playing a position where he's getting
it doesn't
blasted.
Make sense. I'm leading to the fact that it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
That he barely played beginning of his career, couple seasons with the Jets, then went on like permanent backup status. Revived in Seattle, third year in Seattle. God mode Geno Smith. Everyone was shocked at how good Geno Smith was, and everybody is shocked that he hasn't really gotten better from that, and he's actually regressed a bit. So why not let Las Vegas invest in this guy who is clearly regressing or has plateaued, put him on a worse team with a worse offense, with less direction,
less weapons,
a head coach that I guess he's familiar with in Pete Carroll. If that's the big conversion point, why didn't we just bring Russell Wilson back? It just doesn't make sense to me. Bring Beast Mode back. He could he'll run the rock. He'll come back to Vegas. Why not? It's so confusing, and it doesn't feel like it has all the touches of a Tom Brady ownership on it. This feels like management make it a very quick grasp at a move instead of actually thinking out a plan. Because I feel like if Brady had his fingers on this, it doesn't happen. Because where's the common sense?
So a note on that in a second. Ryan's having his own mailbag in the chat, by the way, which I love that. But we were arguing with Ryan on Friday night about how good Geno Smith was. Interestingly enough, I was reading a Ringer article where they actually went and pulled like clips of Tom Brady talking about Geno Smith on one of the games that he broadcasted. I think he only did one Seahawks game this year.
Yeah.
Despite Geno playing like ass and the Seahawks losing, he was glazing Geno Smith the whole game. And he was like, oh, the interception that he threw, he was like, oh, that's not really his fault. It's just bad football by the Seahawks there, which is weird framing for a interception on what was a screen pass. I'm with you on this. I think that Geno Smith is an above-average quarterback. Or he was. He had a season where he was an above-average quarterback.
Yes, season.
Last year, he was very turnover-prone. He was on a team with an improving offensive line, not a great offensive line, with 3 really good receivers. It felt like the production out of those 3 receivers wasn't really truly unlocked. But now he's on a team that has a worse offensive line, one good tight end, a really good tight end, but one good tight end, no run game, and a scattered defense. I don't understand how the Raiders can think that bringing in Geno Smith gets them where they're trying to get to. And I also don't think that this is the right situation for Geno Smith to flourish and to succeed. He is, and the reason why Ryan and I were getting into an argument over this and you were kind of agreeing with me, he is somebody that you place him onto a roster that's great and that he can maybe take them over the top. But you don't win because of a 34-year-old Geno Smith. With all of these roster holes and below average quality starters in multiple positions, especially on offense, he is not the type of guy that is going to succeed despite that. I just don't see it.
Geno was actually a fantastic bridge quarterback for Seattle. And I'm going to take a moment before I bash Vegas and Geno to bashing Seattle, where you got a godsend gift with a quarterback that kept you relevant, kept all your whole team fresh. You didn't have to go into an embarrassing tankathon like we see in Jacksonville. We've seen in Cleveland. We've seen all these bad to Carolina. Like, we're not seeing a tankathon from them. and you had 3 years of Geno to find a successor, start grooming a guy to become the next lead of Seattle. You didn't do it, and now you're getting rid of Geno, and you're left with a huge question mark at quarterback that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. And Vegas, you've just been in rebuild mode for the last couple years, and now Geno Smith is not a solution, but another bridge guy that you're bringing in after legendary bridge quarterback Gardner Minshew and backup, soon-to-be future bridge quarterback Aiden O'Connell. It's just a team.
They were both ass, by the way.
Both were ass. And the idea of a quarterback room with all bridge quarterbacks, it does not work. And if this is going to be tankathon for the Raiders, I understand that. But then if you're doing that, why are you paying Geno so much damn money?
That was where I was.
Where's the money going to Geno for? Why not just invest in a cheaper quarterback and maybe save the money, do something to improve your team for next year, because you're not in on winning this year. Like, that is just abundantly clear to me.
I thought and there were some headlines that were saying that the Raiders could be in the market for a quarterback at 7. I thought that the approach, which actually made some sense to me, was possibly draft Shedeur Sanders, have Geno start for 2 years, hand things over to Shedeur Sanders. Boom, done. I actually don't mind that plan. But you're committing all this money to Geno Smith, who again is 34 years old. I hate when people try to do the whole, well, quarterbacks are playing until they're 40 now. I don't, that's not everybody. Man, that's just not. Yeah. Most guys have what is happening to Russ right now, where Russ is taking step backward after step backward and regressing and regressing. It is hard. It is very hard to play at an extremely high level, and it's an exception to play at an extremely high level way past the age of 35. So this whole thing, Pete Carroll being old, Geno Smith being older, I don't think that this really gets where they're trying to get it to. The ceiling for this team is exactly what Geno Smith is.
Yeah.
Slightly above average. Them going 11-6, 12-5, maybe. It's not a Super Bowl winning team capably in the next 3 years. It's not a division winning team in the next 3 years. I don't think any of those things are going to get accomplished.
Hell no. No, that division they're going to be fourth in division for the next 2 years. They just will. They're going to be worse than the Chargers. They're going to be worse than the Chiefs. They're going to be worse than the Broncos. So you're already going to be in fourth. Maybe you steal a win from one of your division rivals once a year. Well, what's that worth to me? They're just behind. Vegas is a late bloomer still. We could have had a Sam Darnold situation with Geno in 2023 after his monster year in Seattle and said, hey, we need a quarterback. This guy is obviously performing. He's 2 years younger at this point. He's 32 now. Maybe you could squeak out 3 years of Geno and I could rationalize the contract. But you let him get worse, and then you let him have another year getting worse, and we're banking on a one good year from a quarterback into turning him into the, quote, quarterback of the future for a team. It doesn't work like that. Geno Smith is not a good quarterback. He had a really good season. I'd actually lean into a great season. He had a couple competent years, but that doesn't overwhelmingly make me think that he is a good quarterback overall in the NFL. He's great to have at the position in the room, I think. You could throw Geno in a game, he'd be competent. He probably won't lose you the game if he's coming in a backup role. But the investment as a future quarterback for this team is asinine. It's crazy.
The Raiders have been so disappointing, it feels like, for so long, that maybe the approach is just, hey, we want high floor. And that was why you brought in Pete Carroll, despite him probably not having much runway for him to be there for a long period of time, is, hey, we want to just be competitive. We want to go out there and be competitive. If that's what the goal is, it's accomplished by bringing in Geno Smith. You go and spend some money. I think they're pretty up there in an available cap space. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that they're one of those teams that's got a lot of draft picks. They've got a lot of cap room that they go spend some money. You can invest in the defense. You can invest in the offensive line. You can invest in like one more good receiver. You're, again, not realistically turning this thing into a monster in 3 off seasons, 2 off seasons. But you could get them to what I just said, 12-5. At the most, probably most likely 11-6, 10-7 is probably the even more realistic range of what they end up doing, getting bounced out of the wild card and just being scrappy, being competitive. It feels like that the goal here is just to put out a product that isn't embarrassing like it's been over the last 4 seasons.
Vegas, according to PFF and their cap room tracker, I think this was pre-Geno, had $85 million in effective cap space.
Oh yeah, I wonder how that affects.
You're pouring that much. You're pouring this much into Geno with that much to work with.
Ugh.
This is a move you do when you have like less than $15 million in cap space, and you're just fishing for a quarterback to come lead your team. That's what Geno's market should have been, but they just said, I can't imagine Geno's taking a bunch of calls saying, "Oh, they want me. Seattle's going to keep me for this."
Well, actually, I would disagree with that. I would imagine that most teams would really want Geno Smith.
You think that's his market value? Is 30 to 40?
Yeah, I
that's
think so.
Ridiculous.
I think that the Giants would desperately bring back Geno Smith. I think the Jets would desperately bring back Geno Smith. I think that the Browns would be more than happy to have Geno. Like, if we're just talking in a vacuum, forget like the complications of trying to bring him in. I think a lot of teams, yes. This is why like I don't generally disagree with the concept of bringing him in. He's good enough to elevate your team so that there's a consistent starter. But he's not the type of guy that's going to completely take them over the top. So I think most people, yes, would have been, if he was a free agent right now, he would have commanded the same amount of money that Sam Darnold's going to command, which is 40 to 45 million.
Look, my team made a really dumb quarterback decision last offseason. It sunk a bunch of money into an old vet that was hurt. Your team the Giants are arguably even dumber, and they didn't even
All right, they didn't need to get brought up.
They didn't need to sign Geno. We're going to be if Daniel Jones goes out in 4 years and has one good season.
Oh, God, I can't wait for somebody to pay him.
4 years in Arizona, are you going to be sitting here saying, "Oh, we'd take him back in New York"?
No.
Well, Geno was in New York. You're saying we would have taken him back. What if Daniel Jones throws for 4,000 yards 1 year? Would you want him back in New York?
No.
Okay, so then we need to retain context.
But
we're talking about quarterbacks.
Wait, but Geno was a backup for the Giants. I think that the Jets are a complicated conversation to be had a little bit. I think most would be excited to bring in Geno Smith.
I'm just in favor of retaining context over Geno Smith's whole career, which was 9 years of pretty disappointing quarterback play, 1 year that was pretty exceptional for him, and then 2 years of mediocre quarterback play. And paying these dudes massive contracts, massive dollars. I know it's an important position, but this is still pre-draft. We're sinking this much money into a guy, and we haven't even weighed our options yet. If we're going to take a young guy in the first round, if you're that desperate to ruin a quarterback, just throw him out to the Wolves, Vegas. Start him week 1. Go ahead.
Well, part of me, actually, this is a thought that came into my head. You just brought up Kirk. Why do I feel like this could be an Atlanta Falcons type situation where, because isn't Kirk making 40?
Kirk's making big money.
He's making big money. So, like, why do I feel like that this also could end up being the Atlanta Falcons, where they trade for him, they pay him all this money, and then on draft night, Geno Smith's pissed off and calling his agent because, like, what the F? Why did they just take Shedeur Sanders? Why did they just trade up to take Shedeur Sanders?
This all works out, and I look like I got a foot in my mouth, a year from now, if the quarterback they take behind Geno is legit. If they take a lemon behind Geno and he ends up not panning out, then it's just sunk money, dead season, same spot we were for the last 5 years.